Welcome to Amir Onru Studio. Don't forget to subscribe for more content.
Last known moments of 6-year-old Tommy Gregory. On the afternoon of May 5th, 1995, a silent security camera inside a Walmart grocery store in Millbrook recorded a grainy exchange that would become the central clue in a terrifying mystery. The footage from aisle 7 shows a man kneeling to offer a teddy bear to young Tommy, standing alone beside his family's shopping cart. Moments later, the aisle is empty. When Tommy's mother returns to the cart, her son is gone. No witnesses reported a struggle, and no one heard a cry for help. He had simply vanished. All that remained was a single haunting image captured on tape, a seemingly innocent gift that marked the beginning of an unimaginable nightmare. Sarah Gregory was in aisle 6, comparing the prices of canned corn. The task was mundane, a routine part of her weekly shopping trip that took no more than a minute or two. When she pushed her cart back around the end cap into aisle 7, she expected to see her son sitting in the cart's child seat where she had left him. Instead, she saw an empty seat. Her first thought was that he had climbed out to look at a nearby toy display. She called his name, her voice calm at first, expecting him to pop out from behind a shelf. When he didn't, she called again, louder this time. The initial flicker of annoyance quickly turned to a cold, rising panic. Her search expanded, her pace quickening as she moved up and down the surrounding aisles, her calls for Tommy now sharp and laced with fear. Other shoppers began to stop and stare, and a store employee approached to ask if she needed help. Within minutes, the store manager was notified. Following protocol, he made an announcement over the public address system, requesting all customers check for a lost 6-year-old boy in a red shirt. Employees were instructed to monitor all exits, effectively locking the building down. The normal afternoon hum of the Walmart was replaced by an urgent, tense silence. After 10 minutes of a frantic store-wide search yielded nothing, the manager placed a 911 call to the Millbrook Police Department. The first officers arrived on the scene within 5 minutes. They immediately began a systematic search of every part of the building, from the public restrooms to the rear stock rooms and employee-only areas. Sarah Gregory, by then in a state of visible shock, gave her official statement, recounting the last few minutes before she noticed her son was missing. The building search concluded just before 4 p.m. and confirmed what Sarah already knew in her heart. Tommy was not in the store. The investigation had just begun, but it was no longer a search for a lost child. It was now a hunt for a kidnapper. With the physical search of the Walmart yielding no results, investigators turned their focus to the building's only other witness, the network of security cameras. In a small, windowless office, detectives began the methodical process of reviewing hours of low-resolution videotape. They scanned footage from cameras covering the entrances, exits, and main thoroughfares, looking for any sign of a small boy in a red shirt leaving the store, either alone or with an adult. After nearly 2 hours, they had found nothing. No camera captured Tommy Gregory walking out of the building. This discovery intensified the mystery. It was as if he had been erased from within the store itself. The breakthrough came from the tape labeled Camera 4, Aisle 7. Rewinding to the minutes just before the 911 call, detectives watched the silent, grainy scene unfold. They saw the man, the shopping cart, and the brief 30-second interaction. They watched as the man offered Tommy the teddy bear, a gesture that, without context, seemed harmless. Then they saw the man walk away, and moments later, Tommy was gone. The footage was played back again and again, but it offered no clear answers. Only a single haunting image of the last person seen with the missing child. With no other leads to pursue, the Millbrook Police Department made the decision to release the image to the public. At a press conference the next morning, the police chief held up a grainy photograph of the unidentified man and officially named him a person of interest. The image was an immediate media sensation, broadcast on every local news station and printed on the front page of the Millbrook Gazette. The picture of the man with the teddy bear spread throughout the community, shattering the town's sense of security. Investigators hoped for a quick identification, but as the first wave of tips led to dead ends, they were unaware that detectives in neighboring counties were looking at the same photograph with a disturbing sense of recognition. While the public's attention was fixed on Millbrook, The image reached the desks of detectives in neighboring jurisdictions, where it was met not with confusion, but with a cold, dawning horror. In the next county over, a detective working on the 6-month-old cold case of 7-year-old Sarah Klein, who had vanished from a public park, saw an unnerving similarity. There was no teddy bear in his case, but there was a report of an uncommonly friendly man who had approached the children. 50 miles in the other direction, another investigator recognized the method from the unsolved disappearance of 8-year-old Michael Rice, who was last seen on his school playground over a year earlier. In both cases, the abductor had used a disarming, non-threatening approach to isolate a child in a public space, leaving behind no forensic evidence and no credible witnesses. A series of phone calls between the departments confirmed the terrifying reality. The disappearances were not isolated incidents. They were a pattern. The geographical locations of the abductions formed a triangle spanning 3 counties, and the timeline suggested a predator who was growing more confident with each success. In response, a multi-jurisdictional task force was formed, bringing together local police and FBI agents to coordinate the hunt for a single, active serial kidnapper. The investigation was no longer just about finding Tommy Gregory. It was about stopping a ghost who moved between their towns. A predator whose greatest weapon was his ability to appear harmless while hiding in plain sight. While the task force worked to build a profile of their unknown suspect, the man himself, David Crane, lived in quiet isolation. He was not the chaotic or impulsive predator they might have imagined. His actions were born from a cold, meticulous plan rooted in personal tragedy. 5 years earlier, Crane had been a well-known and liked member of the Millbrook community. He was a husband, a father to 6-year-old twin girls, and the owner of a small beloved toy store downtown. His world was destroyed on a Tuesday night when a drunk driver ran a red light, killing his entire family instantly. The driver served only 8 months in prison, a sentence that shattered Crane's faith in justice and society. After the trial, Crane vanished from public life. He sold his home and the toy store, liquidating his assets to purchase a remote, secluded property 30 miles outside of town. There, surrounded by acres of dense woodland, his grief twisted into a dark obsession. He began to plan the creation of a new family, one that could never be taken from him. He spent months studying child psychology, learning the methods of predators to better perfect his own. Using the skills from his former trade, he designed his primary tool, a simple brown teddy bear. He carefully modified each one, soaking its soft stuffing in a custom compounded sedative. The chemical was fast-acting and delivered through inhalation, designed to make a child quiet and compliant within minutes, leaving no immediate sign of a struggle or foul play. In his warped logic, he was not a kidnapper, but a savior, rescuing children from a world that had failed his own. Months bled into one another, and the work of the task force produced no significant breakthroughs. The trail of the man with the teddy bear had gone cold. Public attention began to fade, and the pressure on the investigators mounted with each passing day. Then, just as the case seemed destined for the cold case files, a promising lead emerged from 300 miles away. A hiker in a remote stretch of desert bordering another state stumbled upon a small, weathered object half buried in the sand, a brown teddy bear, its fabric faded by the sun, but otherwise identical to the one from the Walmart surveillance footage. The discovery ignited a media firestorm. News crews broadcast live from the desolate location, speculating that this was the grim breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. For the Gregory family, it was a period of agonizing hope. The task force, compelled by the intense public interest and the possibility of a lead, diverted a significant portion of its resources to the desert. A forensic team was dispatched, and for days, officers on foot and in all-terrain vehicles conducted a painstaking grid search of the unforgiving landscape, looking for a shallow grave or any other piece of evidence. The bear was carefully transported to the FBI's forensic laboratory in Quantico, but the results brought only disappointment. It had been too exposed to the elements. The lab could find no testable DNA, no fingerprints, and no fibers that could link it to Tommy Gregory or any of the other missing children. The desert search also concluded with nothing to show for the effort and expense. The lead was a dead end. Back at headquarters, a grim new theory began to take hold among the investigators. The bear hadn't been accidentally dropped. It had been deliberately planted. They were forced to confront the chilling possibility that their suspect was not only watching their investigation, but actively manipulating it. The failure of the desert search was a devastating blow to the investigation. With no new leads and resources stretched thin, the task force was quietly downsized, the case all but officially cold. Before the files were archived, a junior FBI analyst was assigned one final review of the evidence. Instead of focusing on the blurry face of the suspect, she zoomed in on the object in his hand. Using enhanced digital scans of the original surveillance photo, she isolated a minute detail that had been previously overlooked. The teddy bear's eyes were not the common plastic buttons used in mass-produced toys, but were made of a unique cross-stitched brown thread. This small anomaly provided a new avenue of investigation. The analyst began the tedious work of tracing the bear's origin, contacting toy manufacturers across the country. After weeks of dead ends, she found a match. The bear was a limited edition model from a defunct company, produced for only 1 year. Crucially, the manufacturer's distribution records showed their entire regional shipment had been sold to a single independent retailer, a small family-owned shop in Millbrook named Crane's Toy Chest. The business had been owned by a man named David Crane. A background check immediately raised red flags. Investigators learned of the tragic death of his wife and daughters, his subsequent retreat from society, and the purchase of an isolated, heavily wooded property. For the first time, the task force had a name to connect to the ghost on the tape. The vague profile of a predator was suddenly replaced by the clear image of a grieving father, whose loss may have twisted into a horrifying motive. A search warrant for David Crane's property was immediately secured. As a convoy of state and federal law enforcement vehicles turned onto the long, unpaved road leading to his house, they believed they were preparing to arrest a serial kidnapper. They had no idea they were about to uncover his secret family. When law enforcement breached the doors of David Crane's isolated home, they did not find the gruesome crime scene they had braced for. Instead, they discovered something far more psychologically disturbing. In the basement, Crane had constructed a surreal imitation of a family home, complete with 8 small, furnished bedrooms. Inside were the 8 missing children, including Tommy Gregory. All were alive and physically unharmed. They were surrounded by toys and books, living under a strict routine of meals, lessons, and bedtime stories orchestrated by the man they had been taught to call Daddy. Crane surrendered without resistance, not as a defeated monster, but as a father whose family was being torn apart for a second time. The discovery was a miracle that brought overwhelming relief and joy to 8 families, but it was also the beginning of a long and difficult road. The children had been subjected to months, and in some cases years, of psychological manipulation. The youngest among them had only faint memories of their real parents. Reunification was a slow, delicate process guided by teams of therapists and shielded from the intense media spotlight. The families got their children back, but the ordeal left deep, invisible scars that would take years to heal. The case of the toy maker became a national media sensation, notable for its bizarre and tragic conclusion. Public perception shifted from hunting a child killer to trying to understand the complex psychosis of a man broken by grief. David Crane was ultimately convicted on 8 counts of kidnapping and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The case left a complicated legacy. It served as a stark reminder of how personal tragedy can mutate into unimaginable action and led to changes in how law enforcement profiles offenders whose motives are not rooted in simple malice.
Don't forget to subscribe for more content.